Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and it gives me great pleasure to bring greetings from the committee to one of our those witnesses this morning, which is Todd Parfitt, who is the Director of the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. He has a long history working in the state of Wyoming and specifically working in this department. You'll remember, Mr. Chairman, that our former Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality Director, John Cora, spoke here, testified a number of years ago. Todd has worked closely with him and has succeeded him as now our director. It's interesting, Mr. Chairman, because today, as Todd testifies, he will have worked with a Democrat governor and a Republican governor in Wyoming, and has always put Wyoming first, has done what's best for our state and our environment. So it's a privilege today for me to introduce one of those testifying, Director of the Department of Environmental Quality for Wyoming, Todd Parfitt. Mr. Parfitt, just to kind of review, when it comes to how the EPA credits renewable energy, Wyoming, which produces a significant amount of renewable energy, still stands to be severely disadvantaged. You talked about how much Wyoming can produce in terms of wind energy. I think you said that 85% of Wyoming's wind energy is exported to a number of other states. I heard Chairman Nichols say that California wants to buy even more Wyoming wind energy. But the EPA has said, no, that renewable energy is going to only be credited to the state where it's consumed, not where the energy is created, the hosting state, which means that Wyoming gets absolutely no credit for most of the wind energy that it develops. So I appreciate Senator Carper saying that that needs to be addressed. So my question is, how is this going to impact Wyoming's ability to attain our emission target? And then how much additional renewable generation would we have to develop just to meet the EPA's proposed target?
Well, this makes it very difficult for Wyoming to achieve its target. The estimate of renewables would be somewhere around 9 million megawatts of wind energy that would have to be developed in order for us to meet our target. Right now, Wyoming consumes about 600,000 megawatts of wind energy. So that equates to about a 1,400 or 1,500% increase of renewables that Wyoming uses right now.
And you mentioned a lack of flexibility from the EPA in giving Wyoming what we would need in terms of to continue to produce a lot of the renewable sources. You mentioned that more than half of the land in Wyoming is federally owned, that this has a significant impact on meeting the mandates coming out of the EPA. Your reference to permits, to the NEPA process, to the ESA requirements, for which Wyoming has absolutely no control, and it doesn't seem the EPA is proposing any sort of relief in plans to address these. And I think you specifically cited that only 1/6 of the total area that the EPA has identified for wind energy development is actually available for wind energy development due to sage-grouse considerations, permitting requirements. It seems the EPA is telling people in Wyoming to move faster on renewable energy while refusing to acknowledge that Washington's foot is still on the regulatory brakes. So can you go in a little more detail about how federal land ownership in Wyoming and the red tape that goes with developing energy resources on that land is a Washington roadblock that the EPA ought to address if they want Wyoming to develop cleaner energy faster?
Yes, and what we've seen for wind energy projects where you have to go through the NEPA process, or those projects go through the NEPA process, that they've taken anywhere from 4 to 8 years to get approved through the NEPA process, and then there's an additional Fish and Wildlife Service process for eagle take permits. And those only will, those will add to the time involved. And the other piece of it is transmission. You have to have transmission to move the energy out of the state. Those right now, we have 2 projects that have taken up to 8 years to get through the permitting process, and they're still in that process now.
And we had previous discussions and debate and votes actually in the Energy Committee about transmission lines under the Democrat-controlled Senate in the past, and Democrats specifically voted to block transmission lines on the public lands, which half of the Wyoming land is public land. So that, I think, actually has played into exactly what you're talking about as well.
That is correct.
You also talked about the potential closure of 4 coal-fired power plants in Wyoming, over $1.4 billion, according to the Wyoming Public Service Commission. Well, that's lost investment, and who knows how much it will cost to replace the lost power. And, of course, that's going to be passed on, I would assume, to citizens within the 6-state territory of Pacific Core, and Senator Whitehouse asked a specific question about Pacific Core. So would that mean that folks in not just Wyoming, but California, Washington State, Oregon, Idaho, and Utah are all going to get a big new energy tax increase because of what the EPA is trying to do in closing those 4 power plants in Wyoming and having to build new plants? Am I correct in characterizing what you're saying?
That is correct. Those costs would be distributed amongst all of the states involved with that system.
So California would have higher electric bills as a result of the EPA mandates here through that Pacific Core?
Yeah, there's a portion of Northern California that's part of that system.
Okay. You know, a growing number of states are raising concerns that any type of implementation plan worked out with EPA is immediately going to become federally enforceable, making a state vulnerable to sue and settle lawsuits between environmental groups and the EPA. But unlike most sue and settle arrangements which deal with a single plant or single facility under EPA's power plant rule, a state's entire electricity system could become subject to environmental lawsuits. EPA actually agrees with this concern. During question and answering at an event in February, the EPA's acting air chief, Janet McCabe, said she sees potential for states being subject to third-party lawsuits if they submit state implementation plans. We've heard it from the Texas Public Utilities Commissioner as well. And I guess I'd like to, Mr. Chairman, if there's time, to ask a couple folks here, maybe the first 3 in the panel. If so, do you believe EPA can promise some sort of protection against these lawsuits? What are you seeing, Ms. Nowak?
We think the very foundation of this proposal already intrudes upon states' rights, and to have any state plans subjected to federal authority is a great concern of ours. I think studying state energy policy should be left up to the states and in conjunction with the Department of Energy, not set by the Environmental Protection Agency. So we have great concerns about losing any state authority over any of our existing laws.
Mr. Easterly?
We do not believe EPA can protect us from lawsuits under the Clean Air Act. They can happen, and they do.
Mr. Parfitt?
Yeah, we don't believe that we could be protected from the lawsuits from third parties with a state plan as the proposal has been written.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. Thank you very much.